Chapter 1: Threads of Sacrifice. In the heart of Atlanta's West End, where the streets hummed with the rhythm of everyday hustle, vendors hawking fresh peaches from carts, kids playing hopscotch on cracked sidewalks, and the distant wail of MARTA trains, the air carried the faint scent of magnolias mixed with exhaust from passing buses. It was here, in this vibrant yet gritty neighborhood, that Zenobia Washington had built her world stitch by stitch. At 59, she was a woman of quiet strength, her dark hair streaked with silver pulled into a neat bun, her hands calloused from decades bent over a Singer sewing machine that had once belonged to her grandmother, passed down like a family heirloom laden with stories of resilience. The machine sat in the corner of her small tailoring shop, Zenobia's Fine Stitches, on the ground floor of a weathered brick building that also housed her modest apartment upstairs. The shop wasn't much to look at from the outside, a faded sign swinging in the breeze, windows adorned with mannequins and half-finished gowns, but inside it was a sanctuary. Rolls of fabric in every color lined the walls, silks that whispered of luxury, cottons that spoke of comfort, laces that evoked romance. The air smelled of starch and thread, and the hum of the machine was a constant companion, a rhythm that lulled Zenobia through long nights. Zenobia had raised her son, Orion, alone after his father, a charming but unreliable musician named Marcus Washington, vanished when Orion was just 5. Marcus had been the type of man who could make you believe in fairy tales with his smooth talk and guitar strums under the stars. He'd promised the world, a house in the suburbs with a white picket fence, family vacations to Disney World in Orlando, stability for their little family. But one crisp autumn morning, he was gone, leaving behind a note scrawled on the back of a bar napkin that read, "I can't do this anymore. The road calls." Along with it, a stack of unpaid bills and a hole in Zenobia's heart that she patched over with determination. She didn't crumble. She couldn't afford to. Instead, she poured her grief into her work, sewing wedding dresses for brides who dreamed of forever, prom gowns for girls on the cusp of womanhood, and Sunday bests for church ladies who whispered prayers over her hymns. "God gives us the strength we need," they'd say, and Zenobia would nod, her needle flying. Orion grew up in that shop, his small fingers tracing patterns on scraps of silk while Zenobia worked late into the night. He'd sit on a stool, legs swinging, watching her with those big brown eyes that mirrored her own. "Mama, why do you sew so much?" he'd ask, his voice high and innocent. She'd pause, wipe sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, and smile. "Because, baby, every stitch is a step towards something better, for you, for us." He was everything to her reason to rise at dawn, brew strong coffee in her chipped stoneware mug with the faded "World's Best Mom" script, and face the world with unyielding grace. The neighborhood knew them as a team. Mr. Henderson from the bakery on the corner would slip Orion's sweet potato pastries when he ran errands. Miss Evelyn, the elderly neighbor upstairs, would babysit when Zenobia had rush orders. "That boy is going places," they'd say, and Zenobia would beam, her pride swelling like a well-made seam. By the time Orion turned 18, Zenobia had saved enough, penny by penny, denying herself new shoes, vacations, even basic luxuries like a new coffee pot, to send him to Morehouse, the prestigious HBCU just a short drive away. She worked double shifts, her fingers bleeding from needle pricks, her back aching from hours hunched over patterns. "Mama, you don't have to do this," Orion would protest, but she'd shush him. "Yes, I do. This is your ticket out, baby." Orion excelled, majoring in business administration, joining fraternities, making connections that would launch him into the world. He graduated with honors, his cap and gown a symbol of their shared triumph. Zenobia sat in the audience, tears streaming as he walked the stage. That night, they celebrated with takeout from a local soul food joint, fried chicken, collards, cornbread, and Orion hugged her tight. "Thank you, Mama. Everything I am is because of you." Soon after, he landed a job at Hargrove Real Estate, a top firm in Buckhead, dealing in luxury properties. He bought suits that Zenobia tailored herself, adding personal touches like embroidered initials on the cuffs, OW for Orion Washington. Every Sunday, he'd visit with flowers, red geraniums, her favorite, bought from the market, and they'd sit on her balcony, overlooking the street, talking about his week. "One day, Mama, I'll buy you a house in Buckhead. You deserve it." But life, Zenobia knew from hard experience, had a way of unraveling even the tightest seams. It started 3 years ago when Orion met Clementina Hargrove at a networking event hosted by her father's company. Clementina was the epitome of Buckhead elegance, tall, with flawless caramel skin, hair straightened to perfection, and clothes from designers Zenobia only saw in magazines. Her family was old money. Her father, Reginald Hargrove, owned Hargrove Hardware, a chain of stores across the Southeast that supplied everything from nails to luxury fixtures. Her mother, Serafina, was a socialite who chaired charity galas at the country club, but had never lifted a finger in manual labor, her days filled with luncheons and spa appointments. The first time Orion mentioned Clementina over Sunday lunch, his voice lit up like the Atlantis skyline at dusk, the Peachtree Tower glowing in the distance. "She's special, Mama. Smart, beautiful, ambitious, works in interior design, helps stage those million-dollar homes we sell. Her family's got this big house in Buckhead, crystal chandeliers, the works." Zenobia nodded, her heart swelling with pride for her son's happiness, but a tiny knot formed in her stomach, a loose thread she couldn't quite snip. She knew the divide between West End grit and Buckhead gloss too well, two worlds separated by more than just the I-20 highway. Their first meeting was at Les Bilboquet, an upscale French restaurant in Buckhead, the kind with white tablecloths, crystal stemware, and waiters in tuxedos who spoke with affected accents. Zenobia wore her best navy blue dress, one she'd sewn herself with intricate collar embroidery from a distant cousin's wedding remnant. She fixed her hair in soft curls, put on the pearl earrings that had been her mother's, simple but elegant. "I want to make a good impression," she told her reflection, smoothing the fabric. Clementina arrived 5 minutes late, in a crisp white sheath dress that hugged her figure, her handshake cool and brief. "Miss Zenobia, it's so nice to meet you," she said, her tone polite but distant, as if addressing a distant aunt or a service provider. They chatted about superficial things, the unusually mild Atlanta weather, Clementina's career in interior design where she curated spaces for the elite, and vague wedding fantasies, though they'd only dated 6 months. "I've always dreamed of a cathedral wedding," Clementina said, her eyes sparkling. Serafina's name came up often. "My mother is anxious to meet you, Miss Zenobia. I've told her so much about you." And the way she said it made her skin prickle. The Miss felt like a barrier, a title that kept her at arm's length. Orion beamed throughout, his hand on Zenobia's under the table, squeezing reassurance. Zenobia smiled, nodded, asked all the right questions about Clementina's work, her family, but something in her stomach twisted, an intuition honed from years listening to clients' unspoken needs through their fabric choices. In the car ride home, Orion turned to her with excitement. "She adored you, Mama, said you're so graceful," but heard the lie in his voice, saw the shift in his eyes, a slight aversion, as if he knew the truth but couldn't face it. Still, she held on, believing a mother's love could bridge any gap, could mend any tear. Little did she know, the fabric of their bond was about to be tested like never before. Chapter 2. The Cracks Begin. 3 months later, the invitation came via a gilded card delivered by courier. Dinner at the Hargrove Mansion in Buckhead. Zenobia stared at the heavy paper, the embossed gold lettering feeling out of place even holding it. "They want to get to know you better, Mama," Orion said over the phone, his voice eager. "It's a good thing." She dressed carefully that evening, choosing a simple black dress with a pearl necklace, her hair pinned up. Orion picked her up in his modest sedan, the one he'd bought with his first big commission. As they drove north, the neighborhoods changed, from the colorful murals and mom-and-pop shops of the West End to the gated communities and manicured lawns of Buckhead. The Hargrove home was a sprawling colonial-style mansion, with columns flanking the entrance, a fountain gurgling in the circular driveway, and lights that made it glow like a jewel against the twilight sky. Serafina greeted them at the door, her silk blouse impeccable, diamonds glittering at her throat, her smile sharp as a tailor's shears. "Zenobia, darling, come in. Make yourself at home. But the air kisses barely grazed Zenobia's cheek, and the house felt cold, despite the roaring fireplace in the grand foyer. The interior was a showcase of wealth, crystal chandeliers casting rainbows on Persian rugs, oil paintings in gold frames depicting European landscapes, furniture that looked like it came straight from a high-end catalog, so perfect it was intimidating to sit on. Reginald Hardgrove, a burly man with a ruddy face and a scotch already in hand, grunted a hello from his leather armchair in the living room, his eyes glued to a flat-screen TV showing a golf tournament. He barely shook Zenobia's hand before retreating back to his seat, muttering about birdies and pars. Clementina appeared from the sweeping staircase, radiant in a pale pink dress that probably cost more than Zenobia's monthly rent. She linked her arm through Orion's with a possessive gesture, kissing his cheek. "Miss Zenobia, you look lovely," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. Dinner was served in the formal dining room by a young housekeeper named Maria, who moved in and out like a ghost, eyes downcast, her uniform starched to perfection. Zenobia didn't even look at her when she barked orders, "More water and bring the bread basket." Zenobia tried to smile at Maria when she served the salad, and the girl gave a quick, almost grateful glance before disappearing back to the kitchen. The conversation during dinner was tense from the start, a minefield of subtle digs disguised as chit-chat. Serafina talked endlessly about her friends at the Piedmont Driving Club, the exclusive country club where memberships cost 6 figures, the vacation they were planning to Hilton Head Island with its pristine beaches and golf courses. "We're thinking of chartering a yacht this time," she said, her laugh light and tinkling. "Reginald's new SUV is perfect for the drive down. German engineering, you know. One can't just drive around in anything, right, Zenobia? One has to maintain a certain level." Zenobia nodded, forcing a smile, her fork pushing lettuce around her plate. She didn't know what to say. Her world was MARTA buses and second-hand cars. Clementina chimed in, touching Orion's arm with manicured nails. "Babe, I already told you, when we get married, you have to think about a bigger car. That little sedan you have is so modest. Daddy can help with the down payment. Something safe for when we have kids." Orion laughed uncomfortably, glancing at Zenobia. "The car's fine, Clem. It gets me where I need to go." But Clementina pressed on with a sugary voice. "But we're going to have children, aren't we? We need space, safety. Besides, it's about image and bookhead." Zenobia felt a knot in her stomach tighten. That car was Orion's pride, bought with his own money after months of overtime. She'd watched him drive it home for the first time, grinning ear to ear. "I think Orion knows what is best for him," she said, her voice calm but firm, meeting Serafina's gaze. Serafina stared back for a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Of course, Zenobia. Orion is a very smart young man. That's why I'm sure he'll make the right decisions for his future, for his new family." The way she said new family was like a silent slap, as if Zenobia no longer formed part of that future. The word hung in the air like poison gas, suffocating. Orion said nothing, just kept eating with his head down, and Zenobia understood something terrible in that moment. Her son was letting them push her aside, his silence a betrayal sharper than any word. Serafina kept talking, shifting to the wedding. "Now, about the wedding, Clementina and I are already looking at churches. The wedding will be at the Cathedral of Christ the King, of course. It's where my parents got married, my grandparents, the whole family. And the reception at the St. Regis, nothing too ostentatious, but elegant, because things must be done properly, right?" Zenobia nodded, feeling her throat close up. No one had asked her opinion on any of it. No one had included her in these plans. It was as if her son's wedding didn't belong to her at all. "What do you think, Zenobia?" Serafina asked suddenly with that fake smile, her head tilted. "It sounds beautiful," Zenobia said, forcing a smile of her own. "The important thing is that Orion and Clementina are happy." "Exactly," Serafina said, raising her wine glass for a toast. "The important thing is that they are happy and that they start well without burdens." Without burdens. The word echoed in Zenobia's mind, a veiled insult. Clementina excused herself to the bathroom, Reginald dozed in his armchair with a snore, and Serafina took that moment to lean toward Zenobia, her voice low but clear as crystal. "Zenobia, you seem like a reasonable woman, so I'm going to be direct. Orion is a good boy, but he's accustomed to a certain life, a simple life, and that's fine. But now he's going to be part of our family, and our family has expectations." "Expectations?" Zenobia repeated, feeling the heat rise up her neck, her pulse quickening. "Yes, expectations. Clementina needs stability, a husband who can provide, and Orion needs to focus on his future, not on the past." Her eyes bored into Zenobia's like drills. "The past?" "Don't misunderstand me, Zenobia. I know you've done a lot for your son. That is admirable. But now it is time for him to fly alone, without strings, without emotional dependencies." Zenobia felt as if she had stabbed a knife into her chest, twisting it. Emotional dependencies? She had given everything, asked for nothing. "I have never been a burden to my son," she said, her voice trembling but firm, her hands clenched in her lap. "Of course not," Serafina said, smiling that cold, satisfied smile. "But now Orion has other priorities, and I am sure that you, as a good mother, will know how to step aside when necessary." Zenobia couldn't respond because at that moment Clementina returned from the bathroom, her makeup refreshed. Orion started smiling again as if nothing had happened, and Maria brought dessert, creme brulee with a caramelized top that cracked under the spoon. Zenobia didn't taste a bite, her appetite gone, her mind reeling. When dinner ended, Serafina gave her a small box wrapped in silver paper. "A little detail, Zenobia, so you think of us." Inside was a fine china teacup, white with gold rims, elegant, expensive, cold as ice. "Thank you," Zenobia said, without looking her in the eyes, her voice flat. In the car on the way back to her apartment, Orion was quiet, the radio filling the silence with soft R&B. Zenobia stared out the window at the passing lights. Finally, when they arrived in front of her building, he broke the silence. "Did you like Serafina, Mama?" She looked at him, searching his eyes for the boy he used to be, the boy who hugged her and called her her hero, who helped clean the shop on Sundays. But that boy wasn't there anymore, replaced by a man caught in the pull of a new life. "She seems like a strong woman," she said, choosing her words carefully, not wanting to drive a wedge. "Yes," he replied, smiling relieved. "She's incredible. She and Clementina are very close. It's nice to see that kind of bond." "And us?" Zenobia wanted to scream. "Aren't we close anymore?" But she said nothing. She just got out of the car, said goodbye with a kiss on the cheek, and walked up the stairs to her empty apartment, the box clutched in her hand. That night, while she brewed coffee in her old pot and looked out the window at the city lights twinkling like distant stars, she held the cup Serafina had given her. It was beautiful, perfect, delicate. But when she brought it to her lips, she couldn't drink the coffee she had just poured because that cup wasn't a gift. It was a message. "You don't belong in our world. You're from the past." She left it on the table untouched and went back to grabbing her old stoneware mug, the one with the crack when Orion had dropped it as a child. That one was hers. That one knew the taste of her life, bitter and sweet. As she drank her coffee in silence, a question began to grow inside her, like a dark weed in fertile soil. How far would this woman go to get me out of my son's life? She didn't know it yet, but she would soon find out. The cracks were spreading, and the fabric was fraying. The following months were like walking barefoot on broken glass. Every step hurt, but Zenobia kept moving forward, smiling, telling herself that everything would be okay, that it was normal for a son to pull away when he got married, that she had to learn to let go. But the truth was, they weren't letting her let go. They were ripping her away, piece by piece. Orion started visiting less and less. Before, he came every Sunday without fail. He'd arrive with pastries from Mr. Henderson's bakery, help her move furniture to clean behind it, stay to eat fried fish and grits and tell her all about his week, the deals he closed, the clients he impressed. But after that dinner at Serafina's house, the visits became bi-weekly, then monthly, then sporadic, always with the same excuse. Chapter 3. The Secret Fund. Unbeknownst to anyone, even Orion, Zenobia had been saving for years, not just for his college tuition, but for a special gift she dreamed of giving him on his wedding day. A honeymoon. Not just any honeymoon, but a dream trip to Hawaii. White sand beaches, volcanic hikes, romantic sunsets over the Pacific. It was a place Zenobia had never been, a luxury she had never allowed herself, but she imagined Orion and his bride there, toasting to their future, remembering her sacrifice with gratitude. The idea had come to her years ago, flipping through a travel magazine left in her shop by a client. The photos of Maui's lush landscapes, the blue waters of Waikiki, the luxury resorts with infinity pools, it was the opposite of her life, but perfect for Orion. He deserves the world, she thought. Every extra dollar from a rush order, every tip from a satisfied bride went into a secret savings account at the local credit union. She skipped her own birthday celebrations, mended her clothes instead of buying new, ate simple meals of rice and beans to stretch her budget. Over time, the account grew to $15,000, enough for a 2-week all-inclusive trip, flights, hotel, excursions included. She consulted with a travel agent named Leela, a kind woman at a small agency in Midtown who became a confidant over phone calls and emails. "This is so generous, Zenobia," Leela said when she booked the trip secretly, non-refundable but transferable. "Your son will be thrilled. It's the perfect gift." "I want it to be a surprise," Zenobia said, "something to start their life right." As the wedding plans escalated, the cathedral ceremony with a choir, the St. Regis reception with a live band and 5-course meal, Zenobia was sidelined. The invitations listed her as mother of the groom, but no one asked for her input on colors, flowers, or menu. "It's all handled," Orion said when she offered to sew favors or alter the bridesmaids' dresses. "Clementina's family has planners." The rehearsal dinner was a preview of the hell to come. Held at the Hargrove home, it was a lavish affair with catered food, flowing champagne, and toasts from friends and family. Serafina raised her glass at the head of the table. To new beginnings, to fresh starts without old baggage. The laughter that followed was aimed at Zenobia, though no one said it outright. Orion clinked glasses with Clementina, avoiding his mother's eyes. That night, back in her apartment, Zenobia whispered to her reflection in the mirror, "How much more can I take?" Her face looked older, lines etched deeper from stress. She sewed her own dress for the wedding, an ivory silk blouse and skirt, elegant but simple, a contrast to the opulence she knew awaited. "At least I'll look like myself," she told Miss Evelyn, who nodded sympathetically. The secret honeymoon was her anchor, a light in the darkness. "It'll all be worth it when they see the gift," she thought. Chapter 4. The Wedding Inferno. The wedding day dawned bright and humid, Atlanta's summer heat clinging like a bad memory. Zenobia rose early, brewed her coffee, watered her geraniums on the balcony. "Today is for Orion," she told herself, dressing in her silk outfit, pinning a corsage to her lapel. The Cathedral of Christ the King was packed with Buckhead elite, suits from Armani, dresses from Dior, whispers of deals and gossip. Zenobia sat in the front pew, head high, watching Orion at the altar, handsome in his tux. Clementina walked down the aisle in her strapless gown, the one Zenobia had criticized, looking radiant. The vows were perfect, the kiss sweet. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." At the St. Regis reception, the ballroom was a fairy tale, crystal chandeliers, floral arrangements towering like trees, a band playing jazz standards. Zenobia sat at the head table, smiling through toasts that praised the Hargroves' generosity, barely mentioning her. Then, during dinner, Serafina approached with a bowl of piping hot gumbo, her signature dish, a family recipe from Louisiana's roots. "Zenobia, you must try this," she said, her voice honeyed. "It's what you deserve." Before Zenobia could react, Serafina tripped, splashing the scalding liquid directly into her face. The heat seared her skin, spices burning her eyes, thick broth dripping down her ivory silk blouse, staining it forever. Gasps rippled through the hall. Silence fell like a curtain. Every guest looked down at their plates. No one moved. No one said a word, except Serafina, who straightened with a calm, almost satisfied smile, eyes narrowed. "That is what you deserve," she repeated, lifting her chin. Orion, her only child, the boy she raised alone, sat at the head table, arms crossed. "She's right, Mama," he said in a deep voice, not meeting her eyes. Zenobia felt the floor open up beneath her feet, a chasm of betrayal. The pain on her skin was nothing compared to the ache in her heart. She didn't scream, she didn't cry, she didn't ask why. She simply took the linen napkin from her lap, wiped her burning face with all the dignity she had left, and stood up from her chair without making a sound. She got into her car, started the engine, and as she drove through the dark streets of Buckhead back towards her quiet apartment in the West End, a single question spun in her head. How did I get here? Because there was a time when Orion would hug her and say, "You're my hero, Mama." There was a time when she believed a son's love was forever. There was a time when she trusted. But that night, with her face burning and her heart broken, she understood something she never thought she'd have to learn. Sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who betray us the deepest, and sometimes silence is the only weapon we have left.
Chapter 5. The Cancellation and Revelation. Lila, the travel agent, acted swiftly upon hearing those 3 words. "Are you sure, Zenobia?" she asked in a follow-up call the next day. "Yes. Cancel the honeymoon, redirect the funds to a charity for single mothers in Atlanta, and the rest to a trip for me, Hawaii, solo." The process was quick. The non-refundable booking was canceled, the money refunded minus fees, then reallocated. $10,000 to the charity in Zenobia's name, $5,000 for her own vacation, a week in Maui, staying at a modest resort, but with ocean views and time to heal. The days after the wedding were a blur of silence. Zenobia stayed home, icing her face, the burns superficial, but the scars emotional. Orion didn't call. No apology from Serafina. Then, the family group chat, created for wedding updates, buzzed with posts. Clementina, "Hawaii, here we come. Thanks for the gift, everyone." Serafina, "Can't wait for the photos. Where's the itinerary?" Zenobia, fingers steady, typed her response. "The honeymoon is canceled. I paid for it secretly, saving for years, but after the accident and the mockery of my cheap contributions, overheard and seen in texts, you don't deserve it. Funds redirected to Single Moms Atlanta charity in my name and my own trip. Receipts attached." She included screenshots of mocking messages she'd accidentally seen on Orion's phone months ago. Serafina texting Clementina, "Zenobia's gifts will be so quaint, probably homemade. How cheap." The chat exploded. Messages flew. "What?" from Clementina. "This is outrageous," from Serafina. Orion, "Mama, call me." He showed up at her shop that night, face ashen. "Why, Mama? That was our honeymoon." "You chose them over me, son, in front of everyone. The gift was my love. Now it's gone." Serafina called, furious. "You'll regret this, Zenobia." "No," Zenobia said calmly. "You will." Chapter 6. Ripples of Regret and Renewal. The revelations spread like wildfire through Buckhead circles. Whispers at the country club. Serafina threw soup at the groom's mother? The charity donation made local news, a feel-good story about a single mom's generosity. Zenobia was interviewed. "It's about empowering women like me." Orion's marriage cracked under the strain. Clementina and Serafina's control suffocated him. Arguments ensued about money, family, loyalty. 6 months later, divorce papers were filed. Orion visited Zenobia often now, regret in his eyes. "I was wrong, Mama. I let them poison me." She forgave, but boundaries remained. Love must be earned, baby. Zenobia's trip to Hawaii was transformative. She walked beaches, hiked volcanoes, felt the sun heal her soul. Back home, her shop boomed, clients drawn to her story. She mentored young single moms, teaching sewing, life skills. Serafina's reputation tarnished. Reginald distanced himself. Clementina moved on, but the scandal lingered. Zenobia sipped coffee from her mug, watching the West End sunrise. She was free, thriving. Silence had been her weapon, but now her voice rang clear. In the end, the threads she wove were her own, strong, unbreakable.